So, if the Pentecostal charismatic movement is truly a movement of the Holy Spirit, its founders and leaders should be holy, right? Welcome to the program, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Justin Peters. I hope that this finds you and your family doing well today. Want to thank you so much for joining me. I've done a session on the history of the charismatic movement. Some of you may have already seen this before. I've posted the video before, but it's been a while, and I've got, by God's grace, a lot of new listeners or viewers, I suppose, viewers since I first posted it, so I thought I would repost it. But, to understand a movement, it really helps to have at least a working knowledge of that movement. And the charismatic movement is no different, the Pentecostal charismatic movement. And so this is about an hour or so long presentation talking about some of the men and women who are often referred to as God's generals by charismatics, Pentecostals. These are the founders of the movement, the early leaders. We're going to look at people like John Alexander Dowie, Charles Fox Parham, who was a really bad guy, John G. Lake, Amy Semple McPherson, Catherine Kuhlman, William Branham, and we're kind of going to give you a bird's eye view of the history of this movement, and you will see that to a man, to a woman, all of these individuals that charismatics call God's generals, charismatics revere these individuals today, but we shall see that all of them were theological heretics. They were proven false prophets. Most, if not all of them, were hucksters and just con artists. We'll see that. And many, if most certainly, if not all of them, were also sexually immoral. That, unfortunately, is the sad history of this movement. And dear friends, it is what it is. So I think this will be helpful for you. It's very enlightening. And again, if this is truly a movement of the Holy Spirit, then you would think that its founders would be a lot more holy than what they were.
Good evening. Good evening. Hope everyone is doing well tonight. What a joy to be with you. Thank you so much for the invitation to come. Okay, so my assignment tonight is to give you an overview, a very much a bird's eye overview of the history of the Pentecostal and charismatic movement. It really helps in understanding a movement if you can have just kind of at least a working knowledge of the origins of that movement. And so I want to begin by talking about that practice for which the charismatic movement is probably most well known, and that is the gift of tongues, and give you just kind of a brief overview here of the history of the gift of tongues. The biblical gift of tongues is mentioned only in the earliest of the New Testament books, Acts and 1 Corinthians. Peter, James, John, nor Jude ever mention this gift. 1st, 2nd Peter, 1st, 2nd, 3rd John, not mentioned. James, Jude, is not mentioned. Even Paul, when he wrote the book of Romans and in chapter 12 dealt with the spiritual gifts, did not mention the gift of tongues. So the gift of tongues faded away rather quickly when you look through the chronology of the New Testament. The early church fathers, most of them anyway, Chrysostom, Origen, and Augustine, affirmed the cessation of the gift of tongues. And then after the apostolic age, the only time you see the gift of tongues exercised, it's always with some outside, fringy, heretical, kooky, quite honestly, groups. The first of which would have been the Montanists. This was a 2nd century group built upon new prophecy, and they were known for losing control of their bodies. They would have ecstatic gibberish, they would shake, they would flop around on the ground. So it's just a very fringe group, and they spoke in tongues. And then after the Montanists, the gift of tongues completely vanished, or any exercise, rather, of the gift of tongues, anything that purported to be tongues, vanished until the early 1700s, when you see a group known as the Camisards. This was a militant Protestant group that rebelled against what was known as the Edict of Fontainebleau. This was an edict by Louis XIV that rescinded the religious freedom of the Protestants. And so they were a very militant group, known much more for their militancy than any theology, but they claimed to be able to speak in tongues. And then you have the Jansenists, is kind of like the flip side of the Camisards. This was a militant Roman Catholic group, very violent, and they claimed to be able to speak in tongues, but just gibberish. And then you have the Shakers. Some of you might remember the Shakers in your history books. This was an American sect founded in 1747 by a woman named Ann Lee, came to be known as Mother Ann Lee, and she believed, as the Shakers did, she founded this group, the Shakers, they believed that God could be found not externally, but within themselves. In fact, let me show you a picture of Mother Ann Lee. Now, I'm sorry, that's just what the pictures show. Now, you look at that person, Mother Ann Lee there, and quite honestly, it looks like a dude. That looks like a man, but supposedly this is what Mother Ann Lee looked like. So, and there's a picture of the Shakers there. But Mother Ann Lee, assuming this actually was a female, claimed to be a reincarnation, basically, of Jesus Christ himself. She claimed to be a female version of Jesus. The Shakers were very, very odd. They, as their name implies, they shook in their worship. They would tremble, and they would speak in tongues and unintelligible ecstatic gibberish. But they were also very heretical. They denied the Trinity, and that is a kind of a common theme in what will become later Pentecostal groups. But they denied the Trinity. They believed that Christ was a spirit, and the Holy Spirit was not a person, but rather was just the presence of God's power on earth. So thoroughly heretical. And they also abstained from sex, even within marriage. So they said sex is immoral. And so you might imagine if they outlawed sex, even within marriage, that recruitment for the Shakers was a bit of a challenge for them. They perpetuated strictly by supposed conversions into the Shakers and by adoption. So, it was very, very odd. They talked to dead people, spoke in tongues, so very, very heretical group.